want to get to over to Florida and Wisconsin. The races over in Florida, Wisconsin. I know the Wisconsin Supreme Court had a major race in which Elon Musk was doing his thing. And I'm going to go through different news articles and different platforms in order to gain all of the insight so that we can then draw our own conclusion. But over in Florida and Wisconsin, it was huge races. And I don't believe that the races was huge because it was actually going to transform anything that we've seen on a national level. However, I think that it was a important milestone because often at times the party that loses the majority of the races in a major election and in the off elections, often at times those parties are more successful, but at the same time it's a litmus test. That's what they say. It's a litmus test for how well the current administration is doing, even though it's less than 100 days in. All right, so let's go ahead and get to it. Again, make sure you guys hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Let's first go over to Florida, in which Randy Fine was the person that won Florida on the Republican side. Check it out.
This is a Fox News alert, a crushing blow for Democrats who had hoped against hope. The Associated Press has called Florida's 6th district race for Republican Randy Fine, and in minutes, the polls will close for Florida's 1st congressional district. In 1 hour, the polls will close in Wisconsin's pivotal Supreme Court race between radical Susan Crawford and conservative Brad Schimmel.
The judge race will decide whether the Wisconsin districts get redrawn. They're going to try to gerrymander Wisconsin to remove 2 Republican seats. And as you know, the House is currently Republican by a razor-thin margin, which means that losing this judge race has a good chance of causing Republicans to lose control of the House. If you lose control of the House, there will be nonstop impeachment hearings.
You bet there will be. Joining me now, Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner and a Fox News contributor. Also with me, Ned Ryan, founder and CEO of American Majority. Byron, now this will impact the control of Congress, undoubtedly. Elon Musk didn't get involved in this for nothing.
No, as a matter of fact, there's a lot of talk about abortion in Wisconsin. That's a very big deal, so I don't want to downplay that. But redistricting is really huge. Right now, the Wisconsin congressional delegation is 6 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And Democrats really, really, really want to change that. Cases are going to come, redistricting cases are going to come before the Supreme Court, and that's where a Democratic, we know this is nonpartisan, but a Democratic victory would really help them.
Ned, people think Supreme Court race, state, doesn't matter. And Republicans have historically not turned out to vote in these elections. But, man, between Scott Presler, Trump's robocalls, and Elon Musk, I mean, if Republicans pull out a victory here, all 3 of them deserve the credit for it.
Yeah, and I would add there's some really great Wisconsin donors who have put a lot of money into it. And we've been up there, actually, Laura, with American Majority Action, about 2 million voter contacts the last couple of months. But this is a national referendum. The left kind of stole a march on us. We thought it was going to be a $50 million race total, turned into a $100 million race, about 60 million of that for Crawford, and about 77% of her donations are out of state. So the left fully understood what this was about. If they win, if they keep the majority in the state Supreme Court, get to redraw and get 2 more seats, and kind of turn it into a referendum on Trump in total. So I think it's going to be close. We were hoping for at least a 2.3 million turnout to give Schimmel a chance. He's got to be up 30,000 votes going into Milwaukee before they count the Milwaukee votes. So I think it's going to be razor thin. Right now, though, I think he's down by a couple points.
Brad Schimmel conceding to Susan Crawford, a race watched all across the nation, drawing millions of dollars in campaign spending. Let's get right to 12 News political director Matt Smith with those numbers tonight.
Guys, an incredibly early night. The Associated Press calling this race for Susan Crawford, and this is a reason why. Susan Crawford with 55% of the vote, a 10-point lead with 82% reporting statewide. She has a 184,000 vote lead across the state. $100 million plus pumped into this campaign. Liberal donors, George Soros, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker backing Susan Crawford. Republicans, Elon Musk.
George Soros and J.B. Pritzker on the Democrat side. Billionaire and billionaire families. Obviously, J.B. Pritzker is of Illinois. He is the governor over there in Illinois. And then on the Republican side, in which they, I'm guessing that the Republicans or the people that vote conservative over in Wisconsin, they didn't take it as serious as the Democrats, or maybe they didn't show out because they had already felt like they had done enough during the election in November 5th. Elon Musk, on the other side, he was actually showing out, doing rallies. He was giving out $1 million checks, but they pumped out over $100 million in this race. That is crazy and insane. For a Supreme Court seat, they pumped in $100 million during this election.
President Trump pouring millions backing Brad Schimmel. Let's take a look at some of these critical counties, and this is how the Associated Press called it, and this is how Susan Crawford won tonight. In her home county of Dane County, Madison, the Democratic stronghold, Susan Crawford pulling away with 81% of the vote. That nearly matches what Janet Protasewicz did 2 years ago with 82%. In Waukesha County, the key Republican stronghold, Brad Schimmel with 58%. He needed to do 60% or higher in Waukesha County to really have a performance across the state. Other key parts of the state tonight that we're watching, Northeast Wisconsin. That was a critical part that President Trump won and Janet Protasewicz won 2 years ago. When we look at Winnebago County, home to Oshkosh and other cities like that, Susan Crawford leading there 53 to 47.
She absolutely trounced
Schimmel
him.
really needed to win that county. Other counties across southeast Wisconsin, Ozaukee County, once a Republican stronghold, Democrats seeing some gains in that county. Brad Schimmel with a 53 to 47% lead with 69% reporting. The notice is that gap. Brad Schimmel just ahead by some 2,000. And let's bring it home to Milwaukee County where we are tonight with Susan Crawford with 73%.
Well, we know where Milwaukee County was going to be because it is historically a Democrat stronghold. And he needed to make a huge inroads into that in order to be able to win this race. And there was no way that he was going to win this race without it. So.
Of the vote with 72% reporting. Still absentee ballots out. That, though, only is going to add maybe about 30,000 to Susan Crawford. There's about 50,000 votes that are being counted still tonight as we take a look at the statewide picture with 82% in at 10:04 tonight. Susan Crawford with a 10-point lead. Something neither of these campaigns saw coming in terms of just the sheer numbers, the 184,000 lead across the state. Guys, there's going to be a lot of talk in the coming days about what all this means, what this means for the state Supreme Court, what it means for national implications, the referendum on President Trump and Elon Musk. But as for tonight, Wisconsin voters, it appears, coming out in record numbers, turnout across the state in red counties and blue counties, all up for a spring election.
Absolutely.
And it would be nice if more people actually got involved with local politics as much as they did with national politics. And I don't know if that just comes with visibility or what, but the Democrats showed out and they showed up for this particular election. Here's another look at it from CBS News and how they seen it.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Jesse Mitchell. We have breaking news from that closely watched race in Wisconsin. Liberal judge Susan Crawford has won the race for a seat on the state Supreme Court. Experts see this race in a battleground state as a referendum on the Trump administration. The race also made monetary history. Take a look at these numbers. It was the most expensive judicial contest ever. Let's turn now to CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, what do you make of the results of this?
Big story here is turnout. That's maybe what all that money did, right? I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to sort of emphasize this number up here. Looking at...
I got to get one of these whiteboards, bro. I have to get one of them immediately.
Potentially 2.3 million votes. Now, for context, that is going to be around half, around 50% of the voters in this state. Now, in a springtime election, in an off year for a judicial race, that is really big. So that's the top thing. Now, look, that turnout, the Republican or the conservative side had hoped that that would benefit them. But in fact, what we saw was Crawford running ahead of either Joe Biden 2020, Kamala Harris in 24, especially in, and I'll center this and I'll circle it, in and around Milwaukee and the Milwaukee suburbs where Democrats have to do well to win a race. And so that is where the turnout story connects, Jesse.
So it's amazing that 50% of voters turned out for this. How did that play out in the margins that you're seeing and that divide?
We saw consistently the Democratic counties performing at high turnout levels, one after another. And then we saw what happened was when you compare the Crawford numbers to those past races, to those, say, Kamala Harris races, what you saw was at least a point or two, if not more, where her performance was better than what we expected and than what you would have seen in the past. And that's a pattern that leads to a victory.
So we saw Republicans.
You can tell by the way that the Republicans was talking on Fox News that it wasn't going to be a good thing in the first place. And so they tried to subsidize the campaign by infusing a lot of money in there. But when you don't have people that are enthusiastic about showing up, that's really what it is, right? Is galvanizing your base to ultimately show up at the polls to support whichever candidate you think makes the most sense for the party. But now you have a situation where it could be difficult for Republicans to get things through that they ultimately thought that they were going to get through as a result of controlling all three branches of government, because you can redistrict to where you can add 2 more seats from the Democrat side. But it's galvanizing the base and it's getting people to show up. I personally don't understand why you can't get people to show up in the off-season cycle or the local elections as much as you do for the national election. I know the national election tends to be a lot more galvanizing again, but at the same time, what's more important is the local elections. It's the off-season elections. And they spent upwards of over almost $100 million for this race. And that shows you how important it is.
Republicans and Democrats pouring a lot into this race. We looked at those numbers just a second ago. What does that tell you about the importance of this race to the Trump administration, to the future of our elections?
Yeah, people are going to take this and look, any off-year election, there's always the risk of making too much out of it, right? So with that as a caveat, what happens is people are going to say, okay, which part of the base can be activated? And when? And, Democrats will probably take a lot of heart from this, that they can activate those parts of the base. The cautionary tale is that before the 2024 election, they did that in a lot of elections too. So it doesn't necessarily foretell what happens in the midterms, but it definitely speaks to, we saw a lot of the influence of Elon Musk here. We saw a lot of course, both parties
George
concentrate a lot of
Soros.
money in, and all of that seems to have panned out.
Very good.
What interest does George Soros have in all of these elections? Why is his hand so heavy when it comes to investing in and pumping money into these elections and controlling what happens in these elections? I know what happens on Elon Musk's side, and I know how it is that he stands to benefit, or, how he continues to align with the Trump administration. But why is George Soros, somebody give me some insight inside of the chat, why is George Soros so heavily involved in impacting what's going on in these elections?
Good. Very interesting results there, and that does maintain the liberal swing on the Supreme Court for that state. We want to turn to senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, who has been covering this race, speaking with both candidates. He joins us now on the phone. So, Ed, we saw Elon Musk giving out million-dollar checks, wearing a cheese head hat to rally Republican voters. Why does he care about this race so much?
Well, he and many of the other wealthy people who gave from out of state are concerned about the fact that this state court could conceivably in the next year or so redraw the congressional district lines in a state where you have a handful of competitive races. You're also likely to see the court consider some issues regarding abortion rights, labor rights, environmental policy as well. So there was reason for all comers. In this case with Musk, he sued the state of Wisconsin in January over a law that basically bars automakers like his Tesla from directly selling to customers, and instead you have to use a franchise auto dealership.
Yeah, so how that works, and the reason why it's important for them, or for a lot of these states like Elon Musk, to want things to pass, is not just what happens on a political landscape, but also how it directly affects and impacts his own businesses, such as Tesla. Here in Michigan, we used to have it, and I'm not sure if it's still like that, because you could just literally go and pick it up straight up from the service center / dealer, and they don't have any high pressure sales or anything like that. You're still purchasing it online. I recently purchased a Cybertruck, and the process was I basically did everything through the app, including the insurance and the payment and all of that stuff. And then I just went and picked it up from the service center that was literally right up the street. They recently built one that is even a little bit closer to the place that I have out in the suburbs, but they tried to bar you from being able to sell vehicles, or they're trying to bar Tesla and other automakers that does not have a dealership network, because the dealerships have a huge hand and a huge contribution to ensuring that they, guarantee that their model of business continues to be successful and that they can thrive in the state of Wisconsin. The same thing used to happen in Michigan. And so when I bought my Model Y a long time ago, which we've now traded that in, and obviously we got the Tesla, the Cybertruck. When we bought our Model Y a long time ago, I had to drive down to Ohio, or I had to take a flight down to Ohio, pick up the Model Y, buy it from there, and then drive it back up to Michigan. I believe that has changed now, but over in Wisconsin, it's still a stronghold, a liberal stronghold, and those dealership networks absolutely capture and control a lot of what happens as far as what's going on legislatively over in Wisconsin.
The thought was that he did that and then started donating to the conservative-backed candidate in hopes that maybe that guy, Brad Schimmel, who's losing tonight, would conceivably be a vote against that law. But as he told us on Sunday when we spoke to him, he said, look, I used to be Attorney General of this state, would have defended that law, or would have had to defend that law. So Musk thinks that I'm a vote for him. He's got another thing coming. I will say, Jesse, having spoken with Susan Crawford here, who's winning right now at least leading by double digits, we should point out she spent much of the last 2 weeks especially campaigning against Musk. Not really even talking about Brad
Of course, because he's the hot topic.
But inviting the fact that the wealthiest man in the world was running against her, or trying to stop her. That seemed to work for her tonight. So there could be a lesson here for Democrats elsewhere. If you see Musk get involved, or you want to use him as essentially the whipping boy, the guy to run against, the antagonist, it could work in other competitive races in traditionally battleground states.
So she was able to successfully defeat him, and there you have it as far as the important race over in Wisconsin. It didn't even get a lot of visibility until over the last couple of weeks. And then really leading up to it, again, you had a lot of out-of-state money that was playing a role in what was going on in the politics in Wisconsin, and the Democrats somehow, some way defeated it on the backing of J.B. Pritzker and obviously George Soros. So that is what's happening over there in Wisconsin. Make sure you guys hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Again, I appreciate everybody that continues to support the platform.